Welcome to R&R Living Life as we continue on through Beowa National Park to Disaster Bay Lookout and Green Cape. What an adventure we were having, not only seeing new and interesting places and country, but also getting to drive on some gravel roads, an added bonus. The Green Cape area stretches from Boyd's Tower at the southern headland of Twofold Bay to Disaster Bay at the southernmost tip of the park. Our aim for these videos is so that Rick and I can revisit where we have been and to show our family and friends. Being brought up on the land, our first interest is always with what the countryside looks like and how it is managed, and then secondly in the points of interest in where we travel. But sometimes I get carried away with gravel roads or birds, shells, rocks, and flowers for that matter, that catch my interest. Our first stop for this episode is at Disaster Bay Lookout. The scenic lookout gave us striking views of the unspoiled coastline of the New South Wales far south coast region, over the bay and Nadji Howe Wilderness area. What amazing views and natural beauty of the bay and the Pacific Ocean, contrasting with the wilderness area that runs all the way to the Victorian border. The area is known for seabirds such as the Australasian gannet, oystercatchers and the white-billed sea eagle. Disaster Bay is named in memory of all the ships that have run aground in the region. Formed by waves, the bay is a cove between a trough of 350 million year old rock exposed at Bay Cliff and Green Cape. About 10,000 years ago, Bay Cliff was an island. Since then, ocean currents have deposited sand to form parallel dunes and beaches in the bay. Scores of ships have been wrecked along the New South Wales and Victorian coast. In 1911, a kilometre from Green Cape Lighthouse, the SS New Guinea ran ashore during a trip from Melbourne to Sydney. The captain had his licence suspended for 6 months when it was found he had sailed too close to shore in very foggy conditions. Ships sailing south along the Australian coast could take advantage of the East Australian current flowing south at 2 knots, some distance out to sea. But sailing north, however, it is often better, although a known risk to sail close to the coast, to avoid the strength of the currents. Many ships were wrecked on reefs and promontories using this strategy. It really was amazing to think that the trading routes for early European colonies were protected at enormous cost and effort by small communities of people in isolated conditions, like at Cape Green Lighthouse, the southernmost and second tallest lighthouse in New South Wales, about 45 minutes south of Eden, first lit in 1883. The lighthouse, built on a treacherous coastal headland, was to provide navigational aids for the 19th century European colonies, sea trading and shipping routes. The decision in 1873 to build the lighthouse was one of the first successful cross-colony projects in the long, difficult negotiations towards federation. Over the course of our trip, we have visited some very isolated lighthouses and read about the hardships involved in living in such regions when supplies were offloaded, often in rough weather, and then transported by horse-drawn trolleys along tramways to the lighthouse. They really did make them tough back then. To keep the light burning all night, 3 family units working in 4-hourly shifts were required to supply the large supply of fuel, originally kerosene and coke coal, to keep the light burning. It was a requirement that the lighthouse keepers were married men, so that they not only were they lighthouse keepers, but also signal and telegraph operators. They were certainly hardy men and women there to protect the maritime highways. Ships lying offshore signal with marine flags, with a response hoisted up the flagpole, with communications continuing using semaphore flags. A weekly post office run delivered by steamer or carried overland by horse, began in 1892. The natural landscape around Cape Green has an abundance of marine wildlife, including seals, dolphins, and whales, which we did not see, and gannets and shearwaters that were flying overhead. The harsh, salt-laden, windy environment limits the vegetation's height. We spent over an hour just wandering around the site. Unfortunately, work was being carried out around the lighthouse, so we did not get to see some of the heritage architecture or seafaring history the area is renowned for. I was relieved that I did not have to climb the 116 stairs of the Green Cape Lighthouse, but did enjoy our walk past the lighthouse to the wild and windy Cape Green to enjoy the 360-degree views across the Pacific Ocean and the spectacular and rugged coastline. The swell was fascinating as I watched the tide roll in over the rock formations just off the coastline. Green Cape holds stories of disaster and survival, like the 24 people from the steamer Lely Moon, who were laid to rest having drowned at sea in 1886 after it was mysteriously wrecked below the lighthouse. The tombstones of those shipwrecked lies among the rolling green hills at the foot of the lighthouse. The pounding of the surf in the background reminded us of the power of the sea. For some, I am sure it is difficult to imagine the light station as a working community, remote from many of the niceties of civilization and the remoteness to medical assistance, schooling and food supplies. These families were reliant and dependent on each other, like it or not, and living in close proximity required strict rules of protocols and etiquette. The flag locker, signalling mast and the telegraph station were all important links in the communication chain between the sea and land by flag signals and Morse lamp, and between relay stations along the coast to Sydney by telegraph and later by telephone via a single wire strung between trees. The daily lives and social aspects of life were largely build your own and based on self-sufficiency. Early keepers kept horses for the heavy work of bringing in supplies from Bitangaby Bay. Between supply trips, the keepers were responsible for keeping everything at the station in working order, using carpentry and other manual skills. The lighthouse was the reason for the community, but also needed gardens, wells and animals to support the families. The government outpost, however, was also the social hub for the remote district, with settlers and others nearby coming for organised events such as tennis afternoons. The views in the area were stunning and ever-changing, from heathland to forest, tea tree groves to Banksia woodlands. We stopped where we could check out the occasional sheltered cove, but were fascinated by the towering red rock platforms. Some of the coastal forest was regrowing since the 2019-2020 fires. It was an amazing area. The return journey back to Boyd Town was just as interesting as the journey out. That afternoon we thought the boat needed a wash after the gravel roads we had been exploring, so drove into Eden to a car wash, as well as refuelling ready for the next leg of our adventure. The following day we left Boyd Town and made our way towards Genoa, where we were to camp. We followed the Princess Highway through Kia, one of the most southerly localities in New South Wales, before crossing the border into Victoria. The countryside was stunning, swapping between forest and nature conservation reserves, and then we would see small farms where people had cleared a few acres and built a house. It was difficult to see past the edges of the highway for all the trees, even though a large portion of this area experienced the 2019 bushfires. After setting up Gidget at Genoa Free Camp, we made our way into Malakuta, tucked between the sea and the untamed nature of the Kurrajingalong National Park. This small coastal town was surrounded by pristine waters and a stunning inlet, along with 87,500 hectares of pure nature and 100 kilometres of undeveloped coastline, and the inlet is recognised as a high-value wetland. What stunning scenery! Set on Victoria's far eastern border, Mallacoota is one of the first towns on Gippsland's border as we crossed into Victoria. The coast of Mallacoota is lined with unique rock formations and sparkles with turquoise waters. East Gippsland contains many remote and pristine national parks that protect some of the most diverse temperate forest ecosystems anywhere on Earth, with one of the largest continuous coastal reserves in the southeastern Australia. The port of Mallacoota is a small waterway adjacent to the small town, with an entrance to Bass Strait, where the entrance is closed from time to time. The town is a commercial fishing town, and as such attracts anglers, recreational fishers, boating enthusiasts and abalone divers for miles around. But we were there to look at the scenery. The Bunker Museum preserves the town's unique involvement in World War II and is set underground into the large bunker, which was used for anti-submarine operations, but unfortunately is open only every Tuesday, not the day of our visit. We drove out to Betka Beach with its stunning rock formations at the mouth of the Betka River, where the inland waters break through to the sea, opening up to a fast-running shallow area. There was a flat, wide beach stretching for 3 kilometres, littered with rock formations, backed by stunning coastal heathland and woodlands. From the beach we could just make out the lighthouse on Beowa Island. Rick and I spent over an hour just wandering around the rock formations and trying to spot the crabs in amongst the rocks. From Betka Beach we made our way back to Baston Point, which leads directly into Bass Strait, and where we had a clearer view of the lighthouse on Beowa Island. Beowa Island is situated 14 kilometres from Mallacoota. This 154-hectare island, with its rocky cliffs, bays and stunning scenery, can only be accessed by sea or sky. We could make out the lighthouse that was built between 1858 and 1862, the second tallest in Australia and Victoria's single active beacon. The 47-metre-high structure is made of the island's distinctive pink granite. The island is home to major colonies of seabirds, especially little penguins. A trip to Beowa Island was not on our agenda for this trip, but it would be a great place to visit. On leaving Mallacoota, we stopped in at Gypsy Point, a quiet holiday retreat overlooking the Genoa River that runs south into the Mallacoota Inlet. The little town is surrounded by the stunning Crocodjingalong National Park, which takes up a vast portion of what has been dubbed the Wilderness Coast and is thought to be the first land on the east coast of Australia to be sighted by Europeans. The park protects remote beaches, tall forests, beautiful heathlands, temperate rainforests, sparkling estuaries, rugged granite peaks, and is home to a variety of Australian wildlife, with dolphins and humpback whales often seen offshore. Genoa, in the East Gippsland area of Victoria, is located on the Genoa River and is notable for the discovery in 1972 of early tetrapod fossil trackways in the Genoa River Gorge, dating back 350 million years ago. Tetrapods were one of the first animals that evolved from aquatic to terrestrial, so their footprints are an important prehistoric historical find in the area. The Genoa River starts in southern New South Wales and flows southwards into Victoria, where it joins the Wallara River, which also starts in New South Wales. They join together just above Gypsy Point, where it then finds its course into the Mallacoota Inlet before entering Bass Strait at Mallacoota. My geography was sadly lacking, as I had no idea I was so near to Bass Strait. On returning to Genoa, a historic village boasting fascinating heritage landmarks including the Genoa General Store that was originally built circa 1923 and was also used as the local post office, agency for the State Savings Bank of Victoria and the local bakery, but also the Genoa Heritage Bridge and the Genoa Hotel. But there were other prominent buildings. The bridge is the second parallel truss girder to be built over the Genoa River. The first opened in 1962, being constructed entirely of wooden piles, but the structure failed to withstand the 1919 floods and collapsed. However, by 1928 the present bridge had been opened, and this time reinforced concrete piles founded on concrete cylinders were used to support the structure. Initially, before the timber truss and concrete bridge were constructed, two earlier bridges crossed the river at this location, providing crucial links in the Princess Highway route between Melbourne and Sydney. Initially, the bridge was used by horse-drawn and motor vehicles, but the need for a new bridge to withstand the greater structural stress of heavier and faster cars and trucks was needed. In 1989, the bridge was decommissioned after a new bridge was constructed 130 metres upstream. Old Glenorrey Home Station is one of the earliest European settlements in Victoria, used by William Morris as a heifer paddock between 1835 to 1849 for his Nungatta cattle station. By 1837, Peter Imlay was also running stock on Marramingo on the eastern side of the Genoa River. Genoa has always been isolated, with electricity only arriving in 1971. Today, beef cattle is the main agricultural focus of the area. Genoa was primarily a dairying farming community for much of its early history. Cream was stored in 10-gallon cans and picked up twice a week by Macmillan's Freight and taken to Orp's butter factory to be processed. The cream stands had to be semi-trailer tray height in order that the cans could be easily transferred by hand. Farmers also kept pigs in order to utilise the waste skim milk. In the late 1960s, farmers needed to upgrade their milk-holding vats to stainless steel, but the cost was prohibitive, so many farmers changed over to beef. Later that afternoon, we made our way out to Genoa Creek Falls. From the car park, we followed the path that took us down to the scenic falls. The falls are a set of wide open sloping basalt rocks dotted with 1 to 2 metre high outpouring streams. We enjoyed exploring the area before making our way back to camp, where we watched the roosters making their rounds of the campsite. We will leave you for this episode as we make ready for the next leg of our journey. Join us next time as we explore Cane River and then Nawa. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode and leave a comment. Stay safe and enjoy life. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R, living life.